Hi, this is the part 4 of the Azure DevOps REST API video. In this video, we will see how to update the work item fields. We will see how we can update the story or task state and the description. So in the last video, we saw how to fetch the sprint and the work item details. So currently we have 3 iterations, and under 2 iterations, we have one story and one subtask. Now let's start with the implementation. So first I will convert the work item title to a hyperlink, and we will add a helper method in Sprint's CSHTML Razor page and redirect it to a new page called WorkItems. Now in Sprint's CSHTML page, I will convert this into a hyperlink. So here we will add a new handler called update work items in Sprint's page, and I will pass the selected work item ID. Now in sprints.cshtml page, let's add a new handler. This will get the work item ID as parameter. So here I will fetch the selected work item from the sprint entity and save it in a TempData object. Before that, we have to save the sprint entity into a TempData on the onGet method, so that when this handler is called, we will get the sprint entity into TempData. Else we will get the value as null because it is a new HTTP request. So here I will save the sprint entity into TempData. Now fetch the work item from the sprint entity. Now if we get the work items, we will create another TempData object to save the work item entity. Here we will use redirect to page, and the new page will be work items. Now before moving ahead, we have to do one minor change in the startup CS. So our TempData is stored into a session object instead of cookie. If we don't do this, we might get a bad request exception with the error message saying that the length of the object is too long. This happens because if the TempData is stored in cookie by default, then it cannot handle large objects. So I'll add the session state TempData provider here. Also add services.add session. And after the static files, call app.useSession. Now let's reload the application. So here we got the hyperlinks for the work item title. Now add a new page called workitems.cshtml. On this page, we will display a form where we will show the work item title and work item state and work item description. So I've prepared the HTML form for that. So I'll just reuse this and paste it here. Change the title of the page to update work items. So here we are showing a form with the label and the input controls to display the work item entity object, and from that object we will display the title of the work item, the type of work item, and the description of the work item, and also the current state of the work item. Also, I have used a couple of hidden fields here to store the work item ID and the work item revision. Now in the code, we will use the TempData object for work item entity that we have prepared here to fetch the details and display it. We can use try_get_value to check if the TempData has any value into it. And if we get the value, we will just deserialize the object. Just a correction here. So we will load the data into a work item entity property. So I'll create a new property here. Let's make it a bind property so that we can use it into the onPost method later and load the data into the property. Now run the application. I'm getting an error because we didn't create a system description property in the entity class. So quickly add that. I'll just bind it to a JSON property. Now run the application again. Click on the user story 1. Now here we can see that we got the title, the type of the work item, the description, and the state of the work item. Now let's implement the update work item logic. Now to update the work item, we will follow the Azure DevOps work item update documentation. So we will use this URL to update an individual work item, and we will provide the required URI parameters along with the request body. So let's implement it. Now in the code, first I will add a new method called update work item in our Azure DevOps Manager interface. So this method will accept a work item entity and it will return the updated work item entity object. Now let's implement this. So again, to authenticate, I will use the token format and credentials as we have used in our earlier videos and implementations. So I'll copy this and paste it here. Now let's create a new HTTP client. We will provide the base address and I will reuse the remaining code again from here. Now for our reference, I will copy this URL and paste it here. So we will send a patch request to this URL to update an individual work item. So I'll first create the URI. In the URI, I will pass the substring starting from _APIs because we already provided the base address here. And for ID, I will use workitem.id. Now to update the work items, we need to prepare the request body in a predefined format and use the operation object. So the operation object can contain add, copy, move, and these other values. So let's prepare this. Apart from that, it will also contain the path and the value object. So for this, let's create a new model first. Call it JSON patch operation. Here I will declare three properties. One is for the operation. Second is the path. And third is the value. Let's use this JSON patch operation. Just a name correction here. Now let's create the required request body. So I'll create a list of JSON patch operation. And we will provide the required values to the three properties. I will prepare the list first and then I will explain the code. So here I have added three objects into the list of JSON patch operation. So for the first operation, we need to provide the value as test and the path as revision to provide the work item revision to the Azure DevOps REST API. Now for the value type, I have used string, but we have to change it to object so that it can take the integer value from the revision as well as string value from the other properties of work item entities. And for the second object, I have provided the operation as add, and in the path, we need to provide the path of the field which we need to update, and in the value, we need to provide the updated value. Similarly, for updating the description, we need to provide the path of the system.description field. Now we will serialize this object and pass it into our patch request. After serializing, we need to pass it as a string content. use the encoding.utf8, and in the media type we need to use application/json-patch plus JSON. Let's create a response object and send the patch request. Pass the URI and the content. If we get the success response, we will read the result and return the work item entity. Else we will return null. Now in the work items page, we will create a onPost method and call the update work item method. If the work item entity is not null, to call the update work item entity method, let's inject the DevOps manager here. Call the update work item method using the underscore DevOps manager object and pass the work item entity and redirect to the sprints page. Let's test the application. I will put a debugger here. Let's update the user story 1. So currently the user story 1 is in new state. Let's change it to active and click on update work items. Here we got a success response. Let's hit F5. Now it has redirected us to the sprints page and also fetched the updated state. Here if we see, now the state has been changed to active. Let's do one more operation for the subtask. So here in the description you will see HTML tags also. So these we can format while fetching the work items. So I will change the state to active. Let's update the subtask and also I will change the description. Now the state is changed to active. Let's verify it into the Azure DevOps portal. Go to the subtask. Here we see the state has been changed to active and here the description is also updated. So this is how we can use the work item update REST API to update the work items. Thank you for watching the video. Please like the video and subscribe to the channel.